what's in it on the back end. So before we get into pictures and questions and stuff, I really want to get into the real numbers of how you should analyze a flip. And I'm going to use some terminology, so if you choose to write some of these notes down, just a few of these concepts. First thing, most important thing, is the letters A, R, and V. People just call it ARV. It stands for after repaired value. What's the place worth to somebody who wants to most likely buy it and live in it on the open market? What's the real value? And you'll have, I even see some realtors make this mistake because they're not accustomed to working with investors. They're going to send you 3 or 4 houses that are a block over here, 2 blocks over there, up the street, around the corner, but they're all on the market. No one cares the price of something on the market. Because, you know, quite frankly, you could ask $1 million for this computer. No one's going to buy it. What's someone actually willing to spend for this property? So you want to look at, before you do anything, even to make an offer for wholesaling, or even to buy a rental property, you need to know what's the thing worth fixed up. Doesn't matter what condition it's in. What's it worth fixed up? And you want to look at the same number of bathrooms. You want to look at the, as close to possible, same number of bedrooms, same layout. So a 2-story is different than a ranch, is different than a Cape Cod, it's different than a mobile home. So, you know, make sure you're comparing the apples to apples. Secondly, things like busy street versus side street, subdivision versus in the middle of the woods, number of garages, driveway, on-street parking. Compare as much as you can. And especially around here, there's so many houses in most of these neighborhoods. It's not going to be hard to find 2 or 3 pretty solid houses that are the same or close enough. And also take a look, if you flip through the picture and you're seeing, you know, orange countertops and pink tile bathrooms, take that into account for what your house would look like. Your house would be beautiful. This house is outdated, so yours is going to be worth a little bit more. But that's your starting base. If you don't know what your after repaired value is, you got nothing. The general rule of thumb I use is if it's not been sold in the last 6 months, I'm not really interested in those numbers, especially in areas such as Southside Lawrenceville. Some of your more, in this city, some of your more traditional neighborhoods in the suburbs, the values don't really change. So you can violate that rule, but at the same time, you're going to find them within 6 months. Other cities, I don't know where all of you live or where you call home or where you might do this business, but you know, there's other parts of the country that comps aren't valid for 2 months ago. So make sure you're consulting local experts about values. And real estate agent or real estate appraiser are going to be your best to match us for that. Throw an appraiser a couple bucks. You don't need a full-blown appraisal. Or a realtor's the best choice. They can send you sold comps. You know, the realtor I've been working with her for the better part of like 7 or 8 years. So she does a lot of stuff for me for nothing, but she gets a lot of business. And I help her out with a lot of referrals, so it's a win-win. So I get a lot of extra bonuses that I've proven to her over the years that are worth her time. So I would highly suggest, number 1, ARV, after repair value. That's the number 1 thing. If you can't find 3 good comps in the last 6 months, it's not your house. Don't do it. You can always try to wholesale it, but don't do it yourself, especially starting out. Second thing, when you're flipping a place, you want to make sure that you're in the middle. You don't want to try to renovate a house in the, it's not politically correct, in the lower end neighborhoods. You can still make a house beautiful, and there's plenty. I'm not saying anything bad about the neighborhood. I'm just saying that most of the people looking to buy a house in those neighborhoods might not have the credit to buy it for a mortgage company. So, and at the same time also, you don't want to be trying to flip in Pittsburgh a $800,000 house in Sewickley. Because realistically, at any given time, there might only be 2 or 3 people looking to spend that kind of money in that neighborhood. You want to be in the middle. Most of my flips have been to first-time home buyers. That's going to be your bread and butter, is first-time home buyers, or in that same category would be single folks that are recently separated or divorced. That's pretty much the main 2 categories. I have not flipped many houses to someone that's moving up for their, their 3rd house, and their kids are about to go to college and they're well established. That's just not really the house I'm at. I'm in that middle price range. So in the suburbs, $150,000, $200,000 house. In Lawrenceville, as weird as it sounds, it's like a $400,000 house. But there's still, I sold a place for $420,000 that 2 young couple, they weren't even 30 yet. They were both in the medical fields. Bought that thing. That was their first house. You see about Lawrenceville, you see about Southside. Those are really the exceptions to the rule. But the suburbs, again, in Pittsburgh, 125, 150, 175, 200. That's the bread and butter. Every city's different. In other cities, you can't sniff a house for $400,000, $500,000. Some cities, $1 million is your average, but you're not going to be playing in those numbers at the beginning, regardless of where you live, most likely. So, after repaired value, be in the middle, the median, the average. Most first-time home buyers are FHA buyers, so there are restrictions to FHA. FHA is a government-backed loan that is easier to qualify, and something like 75% of the buyers out there get FHA, and they have thresholds. I think in Pennsylvania it only goes up to like 400,000 or something. So you just want to make sure you're in the middle ground, and you'll be fine. There'll be plenty of buyers if you put out a good product. Yes. With an
FHA, are there certain requirements you have to meet to get the loan? With an FHA loan, are there certain requirements for the house, like standards, in order for them to get the loan?
There's going to be FHA. There's going to be standards. Is the question. First of all, the person, the financials, are a little bit more lenient than conventional. They can have a little bit lower credit score, but it's supposed to be decent, good. They can have much less money down. A lot of loans need 20%. FHA, you can do 3%. So a $200,000 house, you have 6 Gs, you're in. The house gets scrutinized a little more, actually. But it's stuff that you better be doing if you're doing a flip anyway. We're talking handrails, smoke detectors, windows that are operable, no peeling paint, stuff that most anyone would know to do. So I've never had a problem with an FHA inspection. Every once in a while there's some really silly thing that they require. You just go do it. But yes, they're going to scrutinize the house more FHA than they are conventional. Conventional, I bought my house conventional where we live, and there was the whole outside was old peeling paint. It was hideous. But I got a good deal on it because no one else could buy it. So that's kind of qualifying the house, is the after repair value and the location and the median range. So now you need to figure out how much to pay for it. I know this stuff is super boring too, but it's the basics of everything. Where you want to be is another couple letters, MAO, M-A-O. Maximum allowable offer. How much can I pay for this house? And it's a kind of dumbed down, very basic formula. It's ARV, that after repaired value, times 0.7, 70%, minus whatever your repair costs are. And obviously the repair costs could be anything from a couple $1,000 to 150, 175,000 is what I've spent. So very basic math. $100,000 house, it needs 30 grand in work. You have 100,000 times 0.7, you're at 70. What did I just say? 30 in work. So you can buy it for 50. 70 minus 30 is 40. You can buy it for 40 grand. And that's what you could pay to a seller for that house. So you have 40 to buy it, 30 to fix it, you're at 70. And then what your 70, that the difference between the 70 and the 100 is if you're off on repairs, you got some wiggle room. When you sell it, you're going to most likely pay a realtor, so you got 6% there. You're going to have other closing costs, and the whole idea, the whole thing is you're going to make some money. So that's your profit margin too. So general rule of thumb, most any home flipper is trying to make a 20% spread. So if you have a $100,000 house, you try to make 20. It doesn't always work that way, because if you mess up on the repairs, your contractor's not going to care. They want paid. Your buyer's not going to care because they're only going to pay a certain amount for the house. The bank's not going to care because they're only going to lend so much, so it has to come out of your pocket. So your 15 might go to 5, or hopefully not that one. It might go to 17%, 15%, 13%. And it's a bigger deal when you're dealing with a $100,000 house than if you're dealing with a $200,000 house, because you still make a nice buck. But, you know, when doing this right and when get it really churning, as the manager of the property or of the project, you know, even if everything goes wrong and you sell a $100,000 house and make 10 grand instead of 20, there's a lot of people that do a lot of different types of really cruddy jobs to make 10 grand. So, you know, even when things go wrong in flipping, if bought correctly, you can still make a nice buck and have a very, very respectable supplement to whatever job you do, or make it a full-blown career. Repairs. There's not enough time in the day to talk about repairs. That's a whole other animal. But when you're trying to estimate repairs, especially starting out, it's so area specific. You know, windows in one part of the country cost different than windows. Skilled labor in one part of the country is, you know, around here you're going to pay about $30 an hour or more, maybe $60, $70 an hour for a well-trained professional plumber or electrician or HVAC guy. And a laborer, maybe $15. In other parts of the country, I know people that flip a lot of houses, their high skilled labor is $15 an hour. You know, so depends on where you're at. I'm paying more than a guy that I know that's down in Tennessee pays a fraction of the labor. And it's not like he's ripping people off, that's just the going rate. So, for our purposes tonight, we can't talk too much of renovations, or we could be here till tomorrow. But as a general rule of thumb, especially getting started, team up with somebody, please. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. Wherever you live or wherever you're doing this business, there's somebody that's been doing it for a long term. And they're not going to do it for free most of the time. Maybe you got to team up with them. Or maybe you got to pay them a few bucks to walk through some places, and it'll be worth its weight in gold to learn from those people. Because even if you spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 learning from somebody, or partner with a deal and you take 30% and they take 70%, it's a lot cheaper than losing 20, 30 grand on a deal. I'll show you some pictures in a little bit on a house that about 6-7 years ago I lost $21,000 on because of the most stupid reason. And I'll tell you what it is later. It's nothing to do with the house, but we'll go over it. But it can happen to anybody. But I've been in this game for a couple of years, so losing 20 grand, I mean, it still sucks. That's still a bad day. But you can absorb it. But you can't absorb it most likely when it's your first deal or your second deal. So that's why I really, really, really want to emphasize doing your wholesaling first, learning from others, rehab with others, and then do it on your own. So you might pass up a lot of profit, but it'll pay you back tenfold with your education. Questions so far? I don't want to just keep rambling. Yes?
Would you recommend partnering up with a contractor, or would you rather go with somebody who does the flips?
Contractors are tough nut to crack.
Because they make money.
Most contractors don't know much about anything as far as running a business.
Okay.
Most contractors, and there are plenty of really good ones,
mm-hmm.
and I have a lot of good ones, but I've also been through just as many or more cruddy ones. Most of them are really only worried about, do I have money to go to the bar on Friday? They don't know the first thing. Then they're hungover because they went on Thursday to happy hour, and then they don't show up on Friday. So a contractor is a great place to get bids.
Okay.
They're not a good place to learn this business.
Okay.
That being said, I know a couple contractors that own their own flipping business. So they do construction work for other investors, and they flip their own stuff. That's an excellent resource.
Yeah.
But they're few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
You want to learn from somebody that's doing this. The general rule of thumb that I've been told is, if you want to learn from someone that's doing real estate investing, that's great. Learn from somebody that's making 3, 4, 5 times what you think you should be making on the first, couple deals. So, you want someone that's doing 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 deals a year, not that just did their first 3 last month. Because they don't know, they haven't been through the ups and downs. Maybe they got lucky on the first 2, but they're going to learn their lessons too. So get someone that's really qualified. The guy I learned from was in Butler, and they made well over $1 million a year, documented, real income. And I paid them good money to learn from them, but I learned so much more than I paid. So learn from people that are doing it in your city, wherever that is. Yeah.
What makes it attractive for someone experienced to help with someone new coming in? What qualities are you looking for in that person besides just money?
What am I? If someone approached me now and asked okay, first of all, the doofus factor. Are they legit? Because there's a lot of fly-by-nights. I just watched X, Y, and Z guy on an infomercial, and I think I can do it, and I'm talking like I know it all. I'm not really interested. I want someone that wants to learn, and I want someone who can go out there and do it. Because I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and had lunch with somebody or met them at a house, and I don't hear from them for 3 weeks. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because, I don't want to sound like an idiot or like a jerk, but I'm busy. I don't have a whole lot of time for that. I want someone that's going to go do it. I have 2 guys right now that call me about every couple days. They're bringing some pretty killer projects to the table, and I think we're going to make some nice projects together. They want to learn, they want to do it, and they're willing to put their best foot forward. I don't care if you've never done a deal. As a matter of fact, in some cases, it's better that you haven't, because you haven't learned the wrong thing. It's very rare that someone that hasn't done a lot of deals it's very rare that someone that's done 1 or 2 or 3 deals has learned good quality techniques. And I've spent, that local guy, I've spent probably $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in the last couple of years on education. I spent more in learning real estate than I did for 4 years at Duquesne. And I don't use the silly Duquesne degree. So, so I have between those 2 over $100,000, and I know most of you have significant dollars spent here. So it's no different. You got to spend money to learn correctly, but spend it wisely, because there's a lot of jerks on the internet and on TV that sell you a course that's not worth the paper it's written on. So that's why you want to really check out who you're spending your money on, especially getting started, because I'm guessing that most people in this room don't have $2, $3, $4 that if you just flushed it down the toilet you wouldn't be upset or in a bad spot. So I'm just looking for want to do it, willing to teach. Now, not everyone's going to want to do it. So, I don't have time for this. Go away. But there are, I think, in every city, people that they've learned from somebody else and they're willing to share the knowledge, if that person's willing to receive it and do it. Yep.
So where from who in Pittsburgh could guys that are starting off connect to or try and network with?
Well, if you're local in Pittsburgh, the place to start is the RIA. RIA stands, every city in the country has RIAs. Most every, big cities. So depending on where you live, you might have to drive an hour or two, but they only meet once a month, so you can drive. REIA, R-E-I-A, Real Estate Investor Association, PittsburghREIA.com. I'm on the board of that group. There's another organization called ACRE, A-C-R-E, acrepgh.org. That it's the same thing. It's a networking group. I'm a little more partial to REIA because I'm more involved in it. I'm a member of both. And even at those groups, there's some people that I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw. But there are plenty of folks in those groups. There's group leaders. You know, I run a smaller meeting once a month that's just for rehabbing houses. So I go to a local restaurant that has a meeting room, and it's once a month. We have a separate little subgroup topic. So there's people that do that, or some version thereof, that are good to learn from. And but that's where I'd start, is those local little groups. Those little groups, they usually charge you about $150 a year or less to be a member, and that's really all you need to start. And everyone can come up with $150. So that's where you'd start, is those little local REIA groups.
So you said ARV was the most important thing.
ARV is the most important.
So in order to, you have to find the property first, obviously. So
sure.
What are some recommended ways to find properties or strategies you use?
Finding houses.
Yeah.
That's the magic.
That is the magic thing.
Where do we find these magical things called deals? The most obvious answer is going to be the MLS, the real estate agents. And everyone's going to think foreclosure, right? I've found that over the years, the foreclosures are not the deals because everyone thinks they are, so they're not. Now, granted, I've bought foreclosures, but I usually don't even bother going. If I go to a house that's been listed for, say, like less than 24 hours, and it's snowing, and there's like 37 cents of footprint and 15 cents of car tracks in the driveway, I usually don't even make an offer because someone's going to do something stupid and spend too much money. I'm looking for the houses that are kind of falling between the cracks, that have been on the market for a month, 2 months, price reduction. That's usually where the sweet spot is, because I'm going to spend a lot less on a house than other investors because A, I know the numbers a little better. B, some investors do their own work, so they're going to save some labor. In my opinion, though, wouldn't you want to get paid for that labor, so you should still spend the same as me. But so I've gotten outbid more than I've gotten accepted. You know, you're going to make a bid on maybe 10, 15 houses before you get one. Or it might be the first one, but then you might have 20 more offers until you get the second one. So I would, if you make your first offer and it gets accepted, I'd be suspicious you did something wrong. So the MLS is choice one, but it's usually not the best choice because there's too many people. You want to go where the other people aren't. So realtors, I mean, that's where the most volume of property is. But your own marketing and other wholesalers. The best, to date, the best deal that I've ever done on a flip made, I don't exactly know, somewhere between $65,000 and $70,000 on a $235,000 house. It was from a wholesaler. He still made 10 grand on it. So they got a steal. Now that doesn't come around very often, but it was nothing special. It was a little row house in the city. So the wholesalers that know how to market, but then the wholesalers that really know how to market, they're not throwing all these properties on Craigslist and all that stuff. They have their 2 or 3 or 4 people, and they just pick up the phone. So you want to be one of those 2 or 3 or 4 people. You know, I'll get calls every once in a while, and I mean, this stupid thing has made me more money than anything else. Is just by people calling and say, "Hey, I got something," and when they say I got something, I go look at it, and they call a couple other people too. Let's face it, I'm not the only game in town, but when I tell them I'm going to buy it, I buy it. I don't piss anybody off. I don't play any games. If it's not for me, I tell them, and if it is for me, I'm in. Simple as that. The money's there. Do the deal. I've never backed out of something, and I've never screwed anybody. So you can ask anyone that knows the real estate world. I don't think I've ever crossed anybody. So the wholesalers are a great way to get deals. Yes.
Some people might not know how to find wholesalers or what they do. Could you give some background information on that real quick?
The wholesalers, I mean, you're all familiar with the concept of wholesaling, at least in some terms. So the wholesaler, there's plenty of them out there. And just like bad flippers or bad landlords, there's bad wholesalers that don't know a deal or not a deal if it smacked them in the face with a sign on it. So just because a wholesaler tells you something's this much of repairs or because it's worth this much of money, don't believe it. It's probably a lie. Or they might not even be a lie, they just might not know. So the good ones, some of them realistically I don't even know because I'm not on their in list, and maybe I never will be. But sometimes they are on Craigslist, or you just call. Usually when it says handyman special or cheap or cash, it's usually a wholesaler already wholesaling it. It's not a lead you're going to get wholesale yourself. More and more common, it's social media and it's networking. So it's those RIA groups that you asked about. It's going to meet people face to face. It might even be going to the meetings and just getting there a half hour early and get everyone's contact information you can get. Talk to everybody, because usually the guy you would never suspect is the one that's doing the business. They don't, they're not all flashy and wearing the $1,000 suit. It's the ones that are kind of kicked back and observing that a lot of times are the real players. So the wholesalers, the realtors, the best, if you're able to do it, is your own marketing. Because there's no competition. When you're mailing letters, or you got a website, or you got a this, or you got a that with your name out there, you're handing out business cards, whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's inexpensive or more expensive like direct mail, oftentimes you're one of two, you're one of three, maybe you're one of one that these folks have called or contacted or emailed or whatever. So that's the best way, if you can do it, is marketing. Master marketing and you'll be okay. Real estate investing is probably 75–80% marketing, and the other stuff is like, oh yeah, there's houses. Because if you don't have the good marketing, you really don't have much. So if you can do it, when you can do it, your own marketing is key. The folks that I know that are doing 50 legitimate deals a year, 20 deals a year, they spend an obscene amount of money marketing, but it comes back to them tenfold. And like we said at the very beginning, that's not me. I'm doing 3 or 4 or 5. They're doing 50. Would I like to do 50? Maybe some days. Other days I wouldn't want the headache. But there's a guy in Philly that is doing 50 a year. He's like 30, 32 years old, something like that, and he's crushing it. But that's his thing. He's out there marketing like a crazy person. So those are going to be your main things. And of course, there's always the personal referral. This person's mother passed away, and this, that, and the other thing. So telling everyone what you do, I still kind of classify that as marketing. But realtors, wholesale, and marketing, your own stuff. That's I think where your 3 best avenues are. There are always going to be other things that kind of pop in, but those are the main three things to look at. And I've gotten plenty of good deals off the MLS with a realtor. I go out with my real estate agent probably a minimum of every 10 days or so to see stuff. And there'll be sometimes I'll call her and go, hey, I got to look at this today. Like, let's figure out how to make that happen. Even if she's busy, she figures out a way to get me in there. So it works out well. My company doesn't have this big marketing machine, so I rely more on the wholesalers and the realtor than I do my own marketing, which Some days is a mistake, and some days it works out well because I am free to do other stuff. But you know, that's kind of the way I've approached it. So we got the house. We know what it's worth. We know what we can pay for it. How are you going to pay for it? Where's the money coming from? Some people know the next door neighbor that has a decent little nest egg. Some people, their family has a nice little sum of money. Majority, they don't really necessarily know or realize they know someone that has 200K sitting around just making 2% returns. So how you're going to pay for it question is answered with private money. Private folks. Individuals. My parents. Your dentist. You know, your next door neighbor that just retired. You know, whatever the case may be. There's people out there that have been in the stock market and are just getting pissed at the stock market over the years. Or they have CDs in the bank and it's getting like 0.01 return on it. Just like stupid, bad return. You need a little credibility, so you maybe have to have a little bit more knowledge than just, hey, I'm just getting started. That's where the wholesaling comes into play. But you talk to these folks and make a pitch. Hey, how'd you like to have a high return on your money guaranteed, secured by real estate? Tell me more. So the folks that I borrowed money from have taken money out of their savings, out of their CDs, out of the stock market, out of their IRAs, and they were used to and happy getting 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe on a really, really, really good year, 5% return. And I'll give them 10 or 15%. And I'll give them a note and mortgage guarantee, just the same as any other bank with whoever you know gets a house, they get a mortgage, it gets leaned against the house. You don't pay, they take away your house. Very basic concept. So I'll give someone a note and mortgage and I'll pay them 15%, I'll make them monthly payments, or I even prefer to let the money just accrue. So when I do the flip, if I borrowed $100,000 at 15%, and I held it for a whole year, which it wouldn't be a whole year, but just make the math, you owe them $115,000. So they did absolutely nothing and made $15,000 off you. Now, obviously, that really wouldn't work with your 20% spread. So if you're holding, yeah, the numbers change a little bit. But I know other private investors that are getting money lending money at 6%, 7%, 8%. Hard money lenders are companies that lend money. They're going to be the ones that you can charge 15%. And I've done many, many deals at 15% interest. And I've had a house that over 7, 8 months, but I still did good on the deal. It's all about making the numbers work. So you're not going to go to the local bank. You're not going to go to PNC and say, hey, I need a mortgage for this house that looks like it's falling over. There are banks that will legitimately do that. But more common is private folks or hard money lenders. So private lending is folks that are, I'm sure if you think about it, you probably all know 1 or 2 or 3 people that you suspect has a decent amount of cash somewhere. Stocks, retirement, whatever. So the more you think that little group of people expands, hey, this one. And you might talk to the first 6 and they say no, and then the 7th one goes, tell me a little more. And then when they're happy, they usually know other people that have money and they say, hey, check this out. And next thing you know, I mean, today, right now, I probably have, I don't know, $800 to $1 million sitting out in private lenders today. So they're out there. And I didn't grow up in anything special. My family they're middle class, they're well off, but they made nothing special in their lifetime. And I don't know any, I'm not borrowing from Ben Roethlisberger here. You know, it's all private people or little companies that lend money. It's nothing special that everyone can't do. So It's just about their getting out there and talking. So the private money thing, again, there's a lot to get to, and I don't want to take up the whole day, but look it up online, believe half of what you see, and then you can use that to start doing it. But again, most people aren't going to hand you a check for 200 grand if you've never done anything before. So that's why, again, I go back to start with rehab or with wholesaling, because you don't need squat for money with wholesaling. You need like $200-300. So you don't need to borrow anything from anybody to do a wholesale deal. That's how you learn. That's how you get your renovation experience. Then you implement it with a flip. So you might be in real estate investing for 2 years before you do a flip, but you're in a better position. Yeah.
So I know like the barrier to wholesaling is pretty low, but I think what like a lot of us could relate to is like trouble just like with the contracts and the legal and just making sure all of our bases are covered.
Yeah.
Where can we get into all that?
Okay, how many of you live, or once you're done with whatever you're doing at Pitt, plan on staying in the state of Pennsylvania? Okay, so half-ish. So all I can speak to is Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania is one of the weirder states with contract law and real estate law. But I think this holds true, and even if you're going to another country, real estate attorneys is where you need to start. Because I have contracts that work fine in Pennsylvania. If I took them to Ohio, I might get laughed out of the courtroom. So you want to talk to a real estate attorney that's not 3 weeks out of graduating, that has an established real estate law practice and is a closing company in the same office. So most real estate attorneys do closings. Not all have a full-fledged title company or escrow company, whatever your state calls them. You want to make sure that they are closing. Any title company is closing a couple dozen deals at any given time. That's your guy or girl right there. And not all real estate attorneys that have a title company understand real estate investing. They understand buying and selling. They don't understand options and lease options and wholesaling and assignments of contract and all that confusing stuff. So the really good way to do it is find a real estate attorney that's been in practice for a couple years, that also owns a title company, that also is a member of one of those networking groups. It's not that hard. Every investor group in this country or in this North America has members that do creative deals every day of the year, and they all have an attorney. So you go to one of those meetings, you talk to 7 people, I bet you have at least 3 different attorneys. And the attorney that comes up 2, 3, 4, 5 times in that room that night, that's your guy. In Pittsburgh, there's a dude named Brad Dornish. He's downtown right by the hockey arena, by PPG Paints Arena. That guy is a real estate law dictionary. I mean, now you pay for him, so you only want to use them when you got to use them. But at the beginning, drop a couple $100 to get your docs in order. It saves you a world of hurt if you ever end up doing the wrong thing. And there's plenty of other good attorneys. There's too many to list. But in Pittsburgh, Brad's the guy I talk to when I have something kind of weird. When there's something more run-of-the-mill, I don't necessarily always go to Brad because he's the best game in town that I'm aware of, but he's also the most expensive that I'm aware of. So, you got to factor. If you have a very basic run-of-the-mill question, don't go to the top dog and pay $600 an hour or something like that, or whatever they charge. So, real estate investor attorney that is familiar with investors is worth its weight in gold. And realistically, you might go through the first one and they might have been recommended by 10 people, but you're just not jiving personality-wise. You got to go to the next one. But they're out there, and when you find them, you'll have to pay them for their time, and they'll supply you the documents that make you do it legally and in compliance. That's your most important thing, is in compliance. So
I'm assuming they're gonna want their money up front, not like, oh, I'll give you like a percentage of the deal or whatever.
No, Show me the money. Hourly rate. And a lot of them, they could talk to you for 10 minutes and know where you're going. You might not even know where you're going yet, but they know where you're trying to go with what you want. And they probably have the documents ready. And I know Brad, like, he has a wholesaling course. You can buy it for like $100, $200, whatever it is. And there's your whole wholesaling course right there. So, but yeah, it's not the let's make a deal thing. It's here's my rate, take it or leave it. But that's that's too state by state specific to really get into here. But Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, I'd go to Brad first, and all those groups have people like that. Other questions? Okay. So we've found a deal, this theoretical property. We've figured out how to work the numbers. We've made our offer. We've probably made a few offers. It's been accepted. We close. Most lenders, like hard money lenders, are going to have a specific title company or two that they require that you use. All title companies are about the same. You know, their fees might vary by a couple $100, but for the most part, they're all the same. Most settlement fees are regulated by the state, so it just kind of is what it is. The most you might save or lose in any given scenario is maybe $200 to $300. You own the thing. Now, oh shit, now what? Now we got to fix this thing. So, contractors. This isn't really a contractor course, but or presentation, but no, there are bad ones, and unfortunately, there's more bad than good. You want somebody that you can have a respectable relationship with and have an open communication, and they're open to a little bit of critique. And the really good ones will also suggest some things to you that they see and not just do exactly what's told. But the guys I've used will call me and say, hey, I'm thinking about that little corner over there. What do you think about this? It might be just something silly like, hey, we could add a linen closet. But hey, it's, you can use the space. So you want to make sure you're dealing with professionals. The most important thing, if there's nothing else that you learn about contractors tonight, they have to have insurance. There is no Joe Handyman working on your houses. Period. You're better off losing money on that deal than having Joe Handyman work on your house. And here's why. Joe Handyman doesn't have insurance. Joe Handyman might have the best skill set out there. He does fantastic work. But if Joe Handyman falls off a ladder, or God forbid a roof, you're screwed. There's a guy in Connecticut that was doing 40, 50 deals a year, like bought the Ferrari and like went over the top, and one of his roofers fell off the roof and died, and he went bankrupt because the proper documents weren't in order. So before you have it, you can hire a contractor all you want. Before they get a dime of your money, you're getting 2 documents from them, on top of references and referrals and things. This is assuming you've checked them out and you guys are happy. You've agreed to your price. You're happy with him. He's happy with you. This is before the job actually starts. A W-2, maybe, W-9, some tax form. That they're not your employees. If you work in college at the whatever the Subway,
in 1099.
You'll give them a 1099. But what you get in front, if you work at regular place by the hour, at the end of the year you get your W-2, and it says, hey, you made $15,312 this year. You're not withholding taxes from contractors. Contractors say the job's $2,000, you hand them $2,000. They pay their income tax on their own. They're not your problem. So before anybody receives 1 penny from you, you get a W-9. And that's very simple. It just says their name, their address, their social security number, or EIN number, which is like a social security number for a company. And it says if they're a company, if they're an individual, if they're a corporation, a partnership, whatever. And there's certain IRS rules, there's certain organizations you do and do not need to send a 1099 to at the end of the year. But about half my contractors I need to send one to, and the other half I don't. Again, that's another day of who needs to send to what, for what reason. But the general rule of thumb is if you pay anybody more than $600 in a year, $600 or more, you need to make sure you're documenting correctly, because the IRS, if you ever get audited, you're screwed if you don't have the proper stuff sent out. So you get your 1099 at the end of the year, and the only way you can send them a 1099 is if you have their W-9 filled out. So they're not going to be too excited to fill that out at the end of the year if you've already paid them for all their work.
Mm-hmm.
So before they get your money, you get the tax form. Yo.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, highlight that point, that you should definitely get that done before you pay them.
Before you pay them, and and there'll be times that they say, well, I forgot I don't know my EIN number, but I need to get the deposit check. I've given money out, but let's just put it this way: they're not getting their final payment. But like I just met a roofer today, and this is the first roof job. Well, second he's done, but the first one wasn't $600, so I didn't care. The second one for the year, this isn't per job, per year total sum, over $600. So before I gave him his deposit check today, he gave me his W-9. And I told him in no uncertain terms, when we set the meeting, bring the W-9 or we can still meet, but I'm leaving with my checkbook without one missing in your hand. The other thing you need is the insurance certificate. It's it's an Accord, A-C-C-O-R-D is the name of the form. Any insurance agent in this country knows what that form is. If they write insurance for companies, like your car insurance guy might not know what that is. But if they write insurance for contractors or anything such as that, they're going to know what that form is. And if they don't, better get a different insurance agent. You want that form with your name at the bottom saying that you're on the little certificate there, or your company name, whatever. You want that emailed a day, 2 days, 3 days before the project starts from the agent. The form says it's good for a year. So if I bought a policy today, on whatever day of the year this is the 13th. If I bought insurance today, I could cancel it a week from now. But I still have the piece of paper that says I'm good till 2018. I could give it to you in December and you're none the wiser. And I don't have insurance. So the insurance agent is not going to send the paper unless they're paid and current. So never, ever, ever, ever do you accept the insurance certificate from the contractor. I've taken them from a lot of contractors that know what they're doing have a little presentation packet. And I've had some of them hand me, hey, here's my W-9, here's my referrals, here's my insurance certificate. I'm like, oh, you got stuff in order, I like this. And I say, no offense, but company policy, I need this from your agent. And they go, cool, no problem. Because I need the insurance agent to add me in the bottom right, left corner anyway. So if anyone gives you any crap about insurance, they're out. If anyone gives you any crap about a W-9, they're out. Now, if they don't want to fill one out because they're doing a job for $450, I get it. You don't need to send it to them anyway. But if they do a second job for you for anywhere for $150 or above, then you got to get one or you can't use them. Or you risk the fines that go along with an audit, blah, blah, blah. So you hire the contractor once they're documented. The other thing you want to do is an independent contractor agreement with them. Once you have your insurance, once you have your W-9, once you have your price and your scope and all that stuff in order, you need a meeting of the minds, a contract. And usually a contractor is going to write up a bid that just has a list of things and a price. They don't say when they're starting. They don't say when they're finished. And they certainly don't say what the repercussions are if they're not finished on time. So an independent contractor agreement, you know, we've all heard the horror stories. The house gets torn apart, then the guy goes to Jamaica for a week. And then he comes home and the car dies. My favorite, a friend of mine, the contractor lived 1 block from the job site in a suburban neighborhood. So we're talking like 6 houses up the road. They came up with this story. True or not, I have no idea. Their freaking boat sank in the river. And their phone was on the boat. So they couldn't go to work. And he couldn't call her. He didn't have the number. Tell me again why you couldn't go to work when the house was 6 doors up. Like your car could explode and you could still get to work. It's 6. It was right up the street. So these guys will come up with any stupid ass excuse to not do their job on time. A lot of them. Some are excellent to work with. So your independent contractor agreement is a meeting of the minds. It's a here's the, and I'm very specific on my contractor agreement. Here's the material from this store. Here's the SKU number. Here's the color. Here is the pattern that you're going to do with the tile. Here is the soffit, the gutter, the roof, and the siding color. You know, all that stuff. They sign it. It gets notarized in some cases. There is no way that they can say, I didn't know, or you didn't tell me that. So if you ordered beige tile of a certain SKU, put in staggered, and you come in and you have white tile that's in a straight line, we got a problem here. And then you can choose to do whatever you want to do. And if they're not done in time, there's usually a per day penalty. You know, if it's a $100,000, $200,000 house, maybe it's $150 a day. If it's a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house that your holding costs at 15% interest are $200 or $300 a day, think about that. Well, if the contractor's not done, it's his fault. Now, that being said, I'll ask them, hey, when do you think you can finish this job? It's February 13th. I can probably be done by March 31st. I go, all right, here, how about this? We'll write the agreement April 7th. I'll give them an extra couple of days. And it also says in the contract agreement that if there's any big changes in scope, obviously, if you decide you need to rip apart this bathroom and move it to that side of the house, you can't hold them responsible for that time frame. So there has to be some changes to that if you make changes. Now, if you just decide that, I don't know, you need 3 extra kitchen cabinets installed, that doesn't equal any change. You know, that's an extra 20 minutes. That's not an extra 3 days. So you got your contractors, you got your stuff, you've told them what you wanted, you picked nice stuff, you get the house done, maybe you had some delays, maybe you didn't, whatever, it's done, it's clean, it's ready to rock and roll, it needs to be sold. Real estate agent, 9 times out of 10. Every so once in a while you'll get lucky and put a for sale sign up and someone driving past or their next door neighbor or someone on Facebook. I've done a lot of deals on Facebook. You know, I mean, I'm how the hell am I? I'm 36. So a lot of folks that I graduated high school with in the last like 5-6 years have gotten married, had children. In some cases, unfortunately, got divorced or had more kids and needed a bigger house or whatever. Or grandparents have passed. And just by me posting kind of silly, ridiculous stuff over the years, I've gotten deals. I got a private lender from a guy I went to high school with. I've gotten deals from people I went to high school with when grandma needed to go to a retirement home, or mom and dad are downsizing, or I've even sold one to a high school classmate that I was just like, hey, look, I did this house in Shaler. Look, it's pretty. And they said, oh, I like that. You know, that looks really nice. Maybe one day, you know, well, come look at it. So we did that deal. So every once in a while you get lucky and don't need the realtor. You know, obviously the downside of the realtor is the 6% thing. You know, $100,000 house, $6,000. $200,000 house, $12,000. It starts to get a little excessive. But they're professionals. That's what they do. They sell houses. So 95% of the houses I've sold have been through a realtor that I flipped. Most of them from the same one over the years. They list it. When you're first getting started, you don't pick the first agent that you happen to see the sign. You want to interview. You want to make sure that they're good at what they do. You want a full-time agent. There's a lot of agents out there that the kids are in school. I'm kind of bored. The husband or the wife is at work full-time making a really nice wage. So real estate seems fun. I like watching HGTV, and when I sell some places, it'll be the vacation money. In my book, that's not who you want to use. You want to use the professional that makes their living selling houses, and they are good with that area. So one time you might use the guy that's over here in this part of town, and the next time you use the girl that's over here, or you find one that knows a lot about everything and just does that. So get your realtor. They do what the realtor does, and hopefully sell it. Yes?
What kind of questions would you ask them to see if they're legit?
How long have you been doing this? Are you a full-time real estate professional? How many transactions a month are you involved in? If it's maybe one, that's probably not a good answer. My agent at any given time is working with 2, 3, 4 buyers, have 4, 5, 6 listings, and has 2 or 3 or 4 properties in the process of closing. Keep in mind, a closing takes like a month and a half. So it's not uncommon for it to have 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. It takes time to get them. What do you know about the area? I mean, you'll know a lot about the area when you're doing the house. Maybe it's the neighborhood you grew up in. The one house I sold was like a block away from the house I grew up in. I knew that house or that neighborhood like the back of my hand. Quiz them. Throw them a curveball. If they catch it, that's your guy or your girl. If they don't know what the hell they're talking about, go to the next. And the other thing that you can do is find those 3 or 4 comps we talked about a while ago, the ones that are similar. Look in that neighborhood. They don't have to be comps at that point, but look at your neighborhood. If it's Shaler, if it's Lawrenceville, it's Upper St. Clair, it's Oakland, whatever. Find in the last 6 months, every house that's sold. Not necessarily the listing agent, but who sold it, who brought the buyer. And I'm willing to bet if you look at the last 6, 7 months, you're going to see 2 or 3 names pop up 1, 2, 3, or 3 or 4 times. If you have 15 or 20 properties, I'm willing to bet there's some repetition in there. That's your expert. And now the person, unless I go to some crazy ass area that's not around here, that's real close, I use the same person for every area because she's good at what she does. But for just getting started, you want the local expert in that neighborhood. So, any other questions at the moment?
Yeah. Does she do a lot with like investors, or are you her only investor?
She used to work a lot more with investors, but a lot of them are a waste of her time because they'd be driving around looking at 15 different properties that are all rentals for $10,000 and maybe buy one, and she had like 30, 40 hours into that, and her commission would be like $800. She has 2 or 3 investors that she works with. The rest of them, so she's not a very investor heavy, but she's an investor herself.
Okay.
She flips property herself. She's managed rental properties herself. So she knows the game, but she's good. So she doesn't take on every